My Lords, I begin by declaring the financial support I received for a visit this month to Ukraine with the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Explosive Weapons and Their Impacts, as recorded in the Register, as I spoke about in committee on October 16. And in this space, I feel that I should declare that I am this year a student on the Royal College of Defence Studies Global Strategy Programme with parliamentarians from other major parties. The work I saw in the context of the APPG visit is my starting point today. Ukraine is now, as a result of the long-term Russian aggression, at the leading edge of experience and practice in clearing mines and other explosive weapons, and some of the hideous booby trap weapons we saw at a visit to the Lviv State University of Life Safety. Ukraine also now, sadly, has world-leading experience in treating their victims, particularly those needing prostheses, both civilian and military. It has also happened to deal with the awful threats from antimicrobial resistance, particularly in battlefield wounds. And I heard how frontline medics there are adapting to the issue in ways from which our medics can certainly learn. Now, many other noble lords have spoken about supporting Ukraine, and I and the Green Party very much back that approach. But I want to stress how much the Ukrainians can teach us, can share with us. Last night, I joined Sofia Bodin from the Green Party of Ukraine, speaking from Kyiv, and Victoria Ball from the Rosby Climate Initiative at an online event run by the Green Ukraine Solidarity Campaign. Among the major topics of our discussion was how Ukraine is already starting work on delivering a green transition while rebuilding from Russian attacks. Under extraordinarily difficult conditions, Ukrainians are seeing the need to build back better, rather than just replace old, outdated technology approaches, and we can learn from that too. The destruction of the Kakhovka Dam drew international attention to the environmental impacts of Russia's invasion. It has widely been referred to as ecocide, and that has spurred even further a drive to highlight such actions and ensure that they are punished. While I was in Ukraine, I met a fellow member of the Ecocide Alliance, the MP Yulia Yevchenyakova. They're working really hard in this area. And Ukrainians have also been at the forefront of facing up to the hybrid war being waged by Russia. That is action being taken by Moscow, as other noble lords have said, not just against the Ukrainians, but around the world, including in the UK. I briefly focus here on a particular part of that, the propaganda operations, what has also been called political warfare, the use of social media bots, the fueling of internal conflicts and risks, black propaganda. We saw this played out very clearly at Donetsk and Luhansk, as was exposed in 2019 in what have become known as the Surkov leaks. Now, such tactics are not as new as some have claimed. I note the CIA's attempts to smuggle tons of printing and books behind the Iron Curtain from the 1950s onwards. Understanding of this is important, while also recognising that political warfare is now at a new scale and reach. But as the Ukrainians have found in seeking to support and strengthen their democracy under the most difficult conditions, physical and technical defences against such efforts can only go so far. Turning to our own situation for a second, dealing with the weaknesses in our own society is something we have to confront, as the noble lady Baroness Sutty said at the start. When we hear talk about the Russian political war, about disinformation and other dark arts, we need to acknowledge that we in the UK are made vulnerable by poverty and inequality, by corruption, by the failure to stand up to the rhetoric of those who would fuel division and hatred. I would note the comments of the noble and gallant Lord Holton, I would say should be considered in the context of that, particularly when we're thinking about welfare spending. And the forces that have driven poverty and inequality, which is neoliberal ideologies and policies, have to be acknowledged. One of the questions raised at the Green event last night was how, after the war, do we stop the IMF and other international financial institutions doing disastrous damage to Ukraine with policies of austerity, as the neoliberal ideology in post-USSR Russia drove the disastrous rise of the oligarchs and President Putin. Part of my answer was to say we have to be part of building a different world. To support the Ukrainians, our international positions should be uncompromisingly in support of the right of self-determination, of human rights, the rule of law. It is important we support those everywhere without favour. And in that context, I have to note what has emerged this week about British arms being used in the execution of war crimes by the RSF in Sudan, weapons apparently supplied via the UAE. We have to stand for principles, my Lord. That's in our own interests and in the Ukrainians.